Imagine an empire so weak at sea that 70,000 pirates could practically build their own country right off its coastline. In 1671, the infamous pirate Henry Morgan sacked the rich Spanish city of Panama with fewer than 2,000 men and just 36 ships. That alone shocked the world. But over a century later, in the South China Sea, there existed a pirate confederation so massive that Henry Morgan would have looked like a street criminal by comparison. At its peak, this pirate empire controlled around 70,000 pirates and more than 1,500 ships, terrorizing the waters from the Pearl River all the way to the Gulf of Tonkin. Merchant ships vanished. Coastal villages paid protection money. Entire regions lived in fear. And the most terrifying part, this empire was eventually ruled by a former prostitute. Her name was Zhen Yisao. Pirates had always existed in the South China Sea thanks to the enormous amount of trade flowing through the region. But in the late 1700s, many pirate groups were hired as mercenaries during conflicts in Vietnam. What started as scattered criminal gangs slowly evolved into organized naval forces with combat experience, weapons, and discipline. At the same time, war devastated farmland and ruined countless peasants. Thousands of desperate farmers had nowhere to go except the sea. Piracy became survival. Then in 1802, the Vietnamese conflict finally ended. Suddenly, thousands of armed men found themselves unemployed, highly experienced, and already accustomed to violence. Meanwhile, the Chinese government was distracted by internal rebellions like the White Lotus Uprising and barely paid attention to the coast. That was a disaster, because these pirate fleets quickly realized something important. Instead of fighting each other for scraps, they could unite and dominate everyone else. So in 1805, 6 major pirate fleets formed the Giant Confederation. Each fleet sailed under its own colored flag: black, white, yellow, blue, green, and red. The most powerful of them all was the Red Flag Fleet, commanded by a pirate leader named Zhen Yi. The Qing government became so desperate to stop him that they literally offered him a government job managing the imperial stables, hoping it would keep him far away from ships and the sea. It didn't work. In 1807, Zhen Yi died during a storm. And that's when everything changed. The pirate captains gathered together to choose a new leader. Most people expected power to pass to Zhen Yi's adopted son. Instead, they chose Zhen Yi's widow. Just 6 years earlier, she had reportedly worked in floating brothels in Canton. So why would tens of thousands of pirates follow her? First, Zhen Yisao was incredibly intelligent and politically connected. Before becoming a pirate queen, she likely spent years listening to wealthy merchants, officials, and criminals while working around powerful clients. She understood people, money, and manipulation better than most commanders ever could. Second, while her husband focused on warfare, she handled business, and business was booming. Under her management, pirate fleets extorted merchants throughout the region. Salt traders in Canton paid enormous sums for protection. Fishing boats, cargo ships, and even foreign opium traders were forced to hand over money if they wanted safe passage. But there was another reason she secured power. Her husband's adopted son, the man who should have inherited command, became her lover. Instead of challenging her authority, he agreed to serve under her command as leader of the Red Flag Fleet. Now Zhen Yisao controlled one of the largest pirate organizations in human history. And unlike many pirate captains who ruled through chaos, she created laws, brutal laws. Every piece of loot had to be registered and placed into a shared treasury. Pirates who stole from the collective fund were executed. Desertion was punishable by death. Unauthorized violence against villages could result in beheading. But one rule shocked even her enemies. Rape of female captives was punishable by execution. For the early 1800s, that level of discipline inside a pirate confederation was almost unheard of. And it worked. Her fleets became stronger, richer, and more organized than ever before. Soon, the pirates weren't just controlling the sea, they controlled the coast itself. Villages paid tribute simply to avoid being destroyed. Merchants handed over money before even leaving port. Some local communities feared the pirates more than the Chinese government. Because honestly, the government was pathetic at sea. For decades, the Qing dynasty had neglected naval development. China possessed no truly modern professional navy capable of stopping massive pirate fleets. At one point, the government sent a general to deal with the pirates. When he finally encountered them, he panicked and tried to flee. The pirates chased him down, boarded his ship, and killed him. In 1808, Zheng Yisao launched a full-scale invasion into the Pearl River Delta. For an entire year, pirate fleets raided wealthy ports, massacred resistance fighters, kidnapped civilians, and burned settlements. One fleet operating under the Black Flag reportedly slaughtered around 10,000 people during a single campaign. That number terrified the Qing government, so China finally turned to foreign powers for help. The British and Portuguese agreed, mostly because their own trade routes were also suffering from pirate attacks. And now, for the first time, Zheng Yisao faced a serious threat. In November 1809, while repairing ships near Lantau Island, her personal squadron became trapped inside a river mouth. The numbers against her were insane. The Allied forces had around 95 ships, 1,200 cannons, 18,000 men, and several Western warships. Zheng Yisao urgently called for reinforcements. 3 days later, the Red Flag Fleet arrived. But there was bad news. The Black Flag Fleet had betrayed them. Now the Confederation was collapsing from within. The Imperial Fleet launched attack after attack, moving close enough to fire cannons before retreating to reload. Explosions echoed across the water for hours. Then one small pirate boat slipped close enough to an Imperial warship and hurled flaming torches aboard. The ship's powder magazine detonated. Boom! Fire ripped through the fleet, forcing government forces to retreat. But the pirates were still trapped. Then the government tried something desperate. They sent 43 fire ships loaded with explosives and burning tar drifting toward the pirate fleet. It could have ended everything. But Zheng Yisao's captains stayed calm. One by one, they intercepted the burning ships and towed them harmlessly toward shore. And then fate intervened. The wind suddenly changed direction. The last burning ships drifted back toward the Imperial fleet instead. At that exact moment, the pirates launched their counterattack. Using repaired ships as moving shields against cannon fire, they smashed through the blockade and escaped. After 9 days of siege, Zheng Yisao lost only around 40 men. Not a single ship was destroyed. It was an unbelievable victory. But despite winning the battle, she understood something important. The Confederation was dying. Former allies had turned against each other. Foreign powers were now involved. The pressure was becoming impossible to sustain. So Zheng Yisao did something brilliant. She negotiated. In 1810, she offered terms to the Qing government. Her pirates would surrender peacefully, but only if they received full amnesty, kept their wealth, and were allowed to join the military or return to civilian life. And she had one more demand. She wanted to keep her ships so she and her husband could continue operating in the salt trade. At first, the government refused. Why would they allow pirates to walk away rich and armed? But after Zheng Yisao launched yet another large-scale raiding expedition, the Qing officials realized continuing the war might cost even more. So they accepted. Just like that, one of the largest pirate empires in history officially surrendered. The Red Flag Fleet alone reportedly consisted of around 17,000 pirates. 200 ships, and over 1,300 cannons. And the craziest part, Zheng Yixao basically won. She avoided execution, kept much of her wealth, entered legitimate business, and later lived peacefully as the owner of a gambling house in Canton. Meanwhile, the Qing dynasty learned absolutely nothing. They still neglected naval modernization. And just 29 years later, China would once again be humiliated at sea, this time not by pirates, but by a relatively small number of British warships during the Opium Wars. A former prostitute had built one of the most powerful pirate organizations in human history. And the Chinese Empire couldn't stop her.